I wasn't adopted, but I remember hugging my mother once at the age of 4 and never seeing her again for decades. When she held me in her arms again, I was 39 years old. That is a quote from Abigail Dominguez. And Abigail's story of growing up without knowing who her mother was left a profound emptiness, crippled her mind and body with bitterness, anger, frustration, fear, low self esteem, and feelings of abandonment. Many of you who are listening to this today will relate not only with her story, but will rejoice at what happened in the end.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Abigail Dominguez was born and raised in West Africa, and her love for travel led her to Arizona. She is a passionate nonfiction author, an early childhood advocate, and an encourager. Yay, Abigail! For years, all Abigail knew about her mother was her legal name, her date of birth, and the story of how she met her father. This is going to be an exciting episode on Never Ever Give Up Hope. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Well, I'm excited to hear your story. I got goosebumps just reading that intro. And I know that there's many people, as I said on the top, that are going to relate to your story. And just, I want you to share from your heart and tell us your story from the beginning.
All right. Thank you so much, Carol, for having me on your podcast. My name is Abigail Dominguez. I was born and raised in Ghana, West Africa. And my father met my mom when he was 28 and my mom was 18. So a year after their engagement, I came along and they were not married. And so my maternal grandmother was very upset because my dad also worked for my grandfather. And so it was just not a good situation. And so when I was born, well, before I was born, my mom got pregnant and my grandmother did not want anything to do with her. And so she ran away from home and she was determined to give me a chance at life. And so she went away to live with her aunt and then had me. And she brought me back home to live with her mother. And when I was 2 years old, my grandmother called my father and asked him, well, ordered him to come and get me from her house and raise me instead. And so that was it. I never saw my mom for 2 years. She came around when I was 4, and I didn't even know who she was. Well, I kind of knew. I felt that when I opened the door to let her in when she came to visit us, something told me that was my mom, but I wasn't comfortable. I don't know. I wasn't. Anyway. She stayed for like an hour and then she was gone and that was it. I never saw her again. And so growing up without my mom was very difficult. Some friends at school would teach me that my mom was dead. Because they never saw her pick me up from school or drop me off. So they thought she was dead. I had so many birthdays without her. When I became older to understand Mother's Day,
Aw.
my heart was so broken because
Oh.
Mother's Day is celebrated. And I love Mother's Day. I have wonderful mother figures in my life. And so I love that Mother's Day is celebrated. But for me personally, I did not know the woman I came from. And so it was so hard for me to understand that.
Mm.
And my birthday is also close to Mother's Day. It's always like before after Mother's Day. It's
Mm.
around that time of Mother's Day. And so that's even harder. My father, bless his heart, picked me up and took me to his mother and his sisters, and his family raised me, put me through school. And I remember when I became a young girl and I had this monthly visitor, monthly cycle, I didn't have anyone to tell about my father. It was embarrassing, but he's the only father like, mother like
Of
person in
course.
my life, the main person. So it was just so hard growing up and going through all these physical body changes and not having a mother to share with. And it was so difficult. But I thank my father, who was called to be my father, good father, and help raise me up, put me through school, taught me most things I know, encouraged me, believed in my dreams, always encouraged me. Before I was 40 years old, I was determined to find this mother who gave birth to me because there was a void in my life, a deep emptiness that I could never get rid of. Like I wanted to know who my mom was.
Of course. Of
I
course.
had I had low self-esteem. I cried. I became a young woman and I wanted to have a family myself, but I just felt like it wouldn't be complete without knowing who I came from.
Let me back up for a moment to those early years.
Yes.
And I'm sure that a lot of your personality is being formed, and a lot of the things that you are now sharing, that the anxiousness, etc., that you were going through later, even as a young woman. Can you remember back to those early days as a little girl and what you were feeling in that void? To how did you cope? I guess that would be my first question. And how did it affect you? So how did you cope and how did it affect you when you were very young?
Thankfully, I am a dreamer. I believe in when reality is not pleasant, I always dream of another world where everything is
Mhm. Mhm.
perfect. And so the way I would cope was that I made up a story that my mother lived abroad and she was a beautiful woman. I just had to create an image that I loved and
Of
I
course.
preferred. And I just said she loved me, she lived abroad, and one day she would come for me. And I just had to stay with my father for a while, and I believe that story. And then I did have maternal relatives, like maternal family member relatives abroad, and they were like wonderful mom figures. And so creating and believing that my mom lived abroad, even though she did not, was comforting in a sense because I had aunts who lived abroad. So that's how I would cope for my reality and step into this world of belief where she was beautiful, she loved me, she wasn't physically present, but she was present in a different way. But it was something I made up in my mind, and so the reality kept biting me that no, she wasn't, and I was still looking for her, and I had this void in my heart that I could not fill. Because in reality, I knew that that was not true, but it just made myself feel better that she
Mhm.
was just living in a far, far away place where when as a child living in Ghana, growing up in West Africa, Ghana, and imagine my mother was abroad, it just sounded so good and better than my reality of not knowing who she was. One other ways I could cope was that my dad's sisters were very loving and very caring. My dad's grandmother knew that my mother was not in my life and was just really sad for me. And so she was really kind and good to me. And so that was one way I could cope. My grandmother's arms, my aunt's arms, my dad was good. And just another way was the imaginary world that I did think that my mom was living abroad and that one day she'd come and get me.
I think that's a mechanism that a lot of children use who have been abused as well, correct?
I would think so. Yeah.
So it's quite normal, I think, for a child. So in other words, you understood that this was not normal. There was definitely something missing, even though you were around, people that did love you. But there
Oh,
was,
yes.
yes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I always wanted a traditional family. I had good examples of seeing a mother and a father and children around me, and I wanted that. And
Hmm.
I knew that in my family picture, my picture was missing, that my home was broken, and that there wasn't my mother. Like, I would go to school and then come home and want to see my mother there, but she wasn't there. And I would get into all kinds of trouble because my mom wasn't, there wasn't
Right.
that mother to receive me from home and ask me how school was. And she just wasn't home. If she was in my life and working or something, then it's like my brain will just like know that she wasn't there, but she was at work and not far from my thoughts. But not having her non existent at all seems so far away from what I would hope that I would have. That was hard.
Okay, well, continue with your story from, you I interrupted you and you were going to talk about like being a young woman, etc. And we went back to how this affected you as a little girl, when I appreciate you answering that. So now continue sharing what happened next.
Right. And so when I just, when I was 18, I was bitter, angry. When I was mid 20s, I couldn't care. I was so hurting, not knowing and wanting to know so much that
Really?
it came to a point where I was just like, I don't even care anymore.
Hmm.
Um, I knew some of my mom's family. I knew my mother's family home. And when I would go there and visit and ask for my mother, they would tell me, we know a general area of where she is, but we don't
Oh,
really have
wow.
any more information, like a physical location of where she is. And that wasn't very helpful to me because I felt lost, because I felt like her family home was my connection to her. And if they didn't know where she was, then I was at a loss. Then there was just no way that I could ever find her. And that was really hard. And I had dreams of traveling abroad, coming to America and leaving. I knew that once, if I couldn't find my mother in Ghana, then once I was leaving the country, then I would never ever find her. And so I came to America with bitterness. Her birthday is on
Hmm.
April 1st.
So is my mother's.
No way. Yeah, no way. Yes way.
Yeah, that's funny. Go ahead.
And so when her name or her story would come up, and I would tell my friends or anybody who asked that I didn't know my mother, they would think it was a joke. Like, oh, it's April Fool. You're joking, right? I'm like,
Hmm.
no, it's
Hmm.
not a joke. I really don't know who my mom is. And in my 30s, I had good friends that really encouraged me to reach out to her. I didn't know what anything to do with her because I felt abandoned. I felt
Of
like she
course.
doesn't know me, and so why should I reach out? I felt like a mother should be the one to reach out to a child, and not a child, not the other way. So personally, I just hurt so much that I didn't care anymore. But when I in my 30s, one day on her birthday, April 1st, like I've done previously, I would write her a letter, ask God to please take care of her wherever she was. That hope that one day that she loved me wherever she was, and that we'll connect again someday. So every year on her birthday, I used to just write her letters. I think that it helped me a lot journaling because if I think about the fact that she carried me for 9 months and knowing the story of how what she went through when she was pregnant, I can't even imagine being that young and getting pregnant out of wedlock and being rejected by family and friends. And that gave me a sense that she loved me and that she gave me life. That became huge when I was in my 30s and trying to was having a desire to get married and have kids, then I just really did appreciate her so much. So my bitterness changed, my anger changed only in my mid 30s or
Oh,
something.
really? Hmm.
It took me a long time, but I eventually came around, and through journaling, I just thought she loved me, and my desire to find her grew. But it seemed impossible because I was living in America and I didn't know how I could find her. And so one day I called one of my mom's sisters. We have a very good relationship. Actually, I had good relationship with a few of them. So journaling helped me when I was in my 30s. It helped me. Oh, so one day I have good friends with my mother's sisters. And then I called one of them, my Aunt Esther. I called her, and while talking to her, her son, who knows that I never knew my mom, you know, um,
Mhm.
wanted to talk to me and said that she knew where my mother was,
Oh, my goodness.
and that he could get me her contact address. And I was like, oh my goodness, okay. I couldn't wait for him to send me my mom's phone number. And when I got a phone number, I was so afraid
Of
to
course,
call.
yes.
I was like, oh my gosh, she doesn't know me. Maybe she doesn't want me. So it was such a conflict world. In one world, I knew she loved me, wanted me. And in one reality, I was like, no, she doesn't know me. She doesn't love me. Why should I call her? Maybe if I call, she'll reject me. That was the fear that crippled me, the fear of the
Hmm.
unknown, the
Hmm.
fear of the what if, the fear of not knowing what I don't know, like what I don't know, having fear of, I don't know this woman. I don't know if she knows me. So her phone number sat in my inbox for a whole month. And every day it will eat at me. It will eat at me. Like, should I call? Don't call. Call. Don't call. Don't call. 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 Don't call. It was this constant fear and battle within myself. And so one day I said to myself, what's the worst that could happen? If I don't call my mother and something terrible happens to her, I would never know her story,
Of course.
never know from her side. I would never know. I'll just be assuming and have these things that may be untrue. So I
You picked up the phone.
I picked up the phone and I called her. But before I picked up the phone, I had a journal and a pen, and I was gonna just doodle mindlessly because I didn't have any attachment. So I was like, I'm
Hmm.
just gonna call. If it goes worse, I'm okay. If it goes good, I'm good. So I prepared myself for the worst, And I had a wall. I had a not a physical wall, but I had a wall in my brain, like just separating us. So if there was rejection, then I would just walk away feeling like eh. So I call her number, and somebody says hello, and I froze. When I heard that hello, it did sound like one of my aunts, my mom's sisters. And so I was like, have I called the wrong number? I was asking myself if I called the wrong number. I checked the number again. It was the same one my cousin sent me. So I'm like, this must be right. So I said, hello, my name is, she said, my name is Emma. Who am I talking to? And I said, my name is Abigail. She heard my name and she about freaked out. Oh, my daughter, Abigail, my loving, my sweet daughter, my.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, this is weird. I don't know who you are, but okay. And then I had some test questions that I was going to give her. So I said, okay, who gave me my first name? And then she said, your father. Abigail means father's joy. Don't you like it? And I'm like,
Oh.
whoa, she knows my name and the meaning. Okay, this is a good woman. Okay. And I said to her, I had some questions that I said, how old was I when you last saw me? And she said, you were 4 years old when I last saw you. It's been 36 years or so.
Hmm.
Anyway, she knew the math. And I was like, I didn't even know the math. Like, I know I've been hurting for decades, but I didn't really exactly know how many years it had been since I last saw her. And what she said that was so profound to me, she said, I
Hmm.
came to see you when you were 4 years old. And I was so poor, I could not even bring you a toy or anything. And that was honest. I felt her honesty, and I felt like, oh my gosh,
Okay.
she could have said, "Oh, I came to see you when you were 4, and I brought you toys," because I don't remember, right? But she just was so honest about her, how she was so poor and how she could not even afford clothing or toy or anything. So my heart was softened for her.
That's good.
And then I said to her, one of the questions I asked was, "When is my birthday?" And she said, "I was in labor with you on May 13th, but you came out to the world on May 14th at 9 a.m. and you were a Footland breach." And that broke me because
Of course.
I didn't even know that I was a Footland breach. I didn't even know. And only mothers know, only a mother could tell me
Of
that.
course. Yes, yes.
And I knew that she loved me. And I just knew that she could have if she wanted to, but she just couldn't. And I tore up my questions, threw them away, and and then I just got to know her for who she was, and we had a lovely conversation. This day was August 22nd, 2012. I remember that day. It was a Wednesday, and that day has become one of my favorite days. I felt
Aw.
like I felt like she gave birth to me anew. I felt like, even though I was born in May, I felt like August 22nd was just, she just gave me a new peace, a new joy, a new hope, a new comfort. She did not reject me like I was thinking. She didn't abandon me like I was hoping. She told me her life story. She told me where she lived, and she was still broken and still kind of destitute, poor, and had the worst living conditions. And after she had me, she kept having children, and she quit school. She wasn't the same after she had me. And I don't understand everything about our separation, but in that moment when she answered my test questions
Hmm.
beyond what I knew, just give me acceptance and love that was just new, and just I was just in love with her. I could not wait to call her every other day and just see how she's doing. And um, so the next year, so August 22nd, 2012 was when I first talked to her on the phone as an adult. And then the following year, when my birthday came, I was able to, no, Mother's Day came first. And her birthday came first, April 1st. I was able to call her and wish her happy birthday. And I was able to wish her Mother's Day, and she could wish me a happy birthday. And she was very apologetic of not being in my life, and said how she couldn't even imagine what I went through. And I'm so grateful that I was able to overcome my fear,
Yes.
to let go of all the things I held, all the bitterness, the anger, all the frustration, all the negative thoughts that I had, because I went online to research mother daughter reunions, and I heard of stories that was wonderful, but some were so heartbreaking. There were some daughters who never wanted to know who their mom was, and were never able to find them. And here I was able to first reunite with her voice. And then it took me 3 years, and I did meet her in person in Ghana. So I'm really grateful that I overcame my fears and all those dark places I was, and then to behold the light, and to forgive, and to be forgiven, and to give myself grace, and to give her grace, and to overcome the past, and to just start over again afresh.
Well, now you're early childhood advocate too. So what does that involve?
So I say that what I mean personally is that I became an early education teacher, and I love children so much because I never had a childhood that I wanted to have.
Hmm.
And I came to know over the years, I was a nanny for many years, and these children were so loving and just so pure, and just so, I thought my mother missed out growing up with me, because children are just so
That's
wonderful
right.
and just so funny, humorous. They say the funny things, profound things, true things. They say, I just enjoy being a nanny. And being an early education teacher. So my advocacy is protecting them and giving
Okay.
back to them what I did not have.
Aw.
And I'm just so like, I don't take bullying lightly. I don't take unkindness against children lightly. And in my own little way that I can protect them and give them hope and comfort and joy through my education, through my work as a teacher, that's where my advocacy is from. And so that's how I define, not like a legal advocate, but in my own way of advocacy.
I see.
That's what I mean by advocacy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about your two books, and I'm excited to hear about them. We'll be
Okay.
right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Well, your story, Abigail, has touched every woman's heart, every mother's heart, and I'm sure every listener's heart as you shared from your heart today. And what a great ending to the story. I know it's not an ending, it's a continuing, but just thank you so much for sharing that raw and very much tender. And I thank you. I thank you for sharing what you went through. There will be many, many other people, male and female, I'm sure, who can relate to that and to see how you now have a beautiful ending to that part of your story. So now I want to talk about your books. So your first book, Heart to Heart with Abba, a nanny teacher reflection, gives a delightful insight into honoring young children. It is a compilation of short stories with children's narratives about how they see the world through their stages of development. That's so cool. I love that. And,
Aw.
and the second book, My Mom's Incredible Voice, a memoir of honoring my parents. Oh, I got goosebumps just reading that. And then
Aw.
you said you recount the first time you heard your mother's voice in adulthood after 3 decades of separation. So tell us about your two books.
So, thank you, Carol. My first book, Heart to Heart with Abagaba, it's a book honoring the conversations I had with children as a nanny and an early education teacher and my reflections on them. Why Abagaba? My name is Abigail, and a 2-year-old tried to say my name Abigail, and she said Abagaba. And so, since the book celebrates conversations with
Ah,
children, I wanted to name it after that. For example, it begins with Africa has a blue door. My first nanny family, a boy that I took care of, knew that I was from Africa. And so one day we were walking to the grocery store, and then she saw my apartment door, which was blue. So in his mind, that must be Africa, right? If you Abby, and if you African, and if you come to my home and go home from a blue door, that must be Africa. And so then that taught my reflections were that
mhm.
he is an intelligent boy who is connecting a place I'm from to a place that he knows that I live. And so it's just the wonderful, funny, profound things that children told me,
Oh,
my
cool.
reflections on them. So my second book, My Mom's Incredible Voice, is about my mother and I, how we first had a voice reunion after more than 3 decades. And then we had a physical reunion also. And there is a beautiful ending between my parents. That's what it's about. So my mom, not knowing her, finding her, physically reuniting with her, and then another story about my parents on their own reuniting, and so many good things happening
Oh,
after
that's
their reunion.
exciting. That's exciting. Wonderful. Awesome, awesome ending to a story. That sounds wonderful. So, what would you like to share with the audience in any area as far as an encouragement to them or anything else that you would like to share with the audience?
Yes, so I would like to share that to never give up hope. I never give up. My journey to find my mother or any other successful moment in my life has been very hard, and I've had to work for it, and it's been very difficult, and sometimes the road seemed bleak and I could just throw in the towel and be like, I'm done. But there were lots of tears and uncertainty, but I never give up. Fear is to replace fear with faith and do the best that we can. And may the Lord bless our efforts and turn our darkness into light. Um, don't ever give up. I never give up. And I'm so grateful that I was able to overcome my fear of the unknown with my mother, and that I've been able to, I now know who she is. I'm not singing that old song anymore. I know who she is, and I'm in connection with her. And I know that not many reunions end like mine.
Right.
And that is why, had I not reached out, I would have missed out. Uh,
Right, right.
for example, my mother, the day I first talked to her, she was like, "How old are you, Abby?" And I'm like, "I'm 37." And she said, "Oh, are my grandkids around so I can say hello to them?" And I said, "Mom, I don't have any children." She says, "Oh, my daughter, you are going to marry and have children, twins, a boy and a girl." She spoke it into existence, give them names. And for 11 years that I've been communicating with her, she always professed it. Like, she always like spoke the names. And
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
have twins now, a boy and a girl. So I'm so grateful that I reached out and overcame my fear. So never give up hope and keep trying. Even if you do your best and the outcome is negative, you know that you've done your best and you gave it your best shot. And the outcome sometimes is not up to us, but we just do the very best that we can, and to never give up hope.
What an encouragement to anyone in the audience, no matter what they are coping with. And I thank you for that. Also, as we were listening to your story, one of your babies was crying, and it just kind of made it even more real, just coming
Oh,
from your heart and the love that you have now. It's full circle that that you've
it.
been able to mother these babies, these twins, and I just am excited for you and for the next chapter. Is
Thank you.
is there another book in the works or anything else that might be coming up?
There is another book in the works. I struggling with a title. I don't know what to call it, but definitely I'm working on a third book.
Okay, all right. And is it going to be a story or is it
I'm so torn. Part of me wants to make it my first children's book about my twin babies,
oh, okay,
and
okay.
then also part of me is like I want to make it like a book about my mom's prediction, and
Interesting. All
so that
right.
I have my babies now. So I'm so torn. I'm still trying to
Okay.
decide what
All
to
right.
do.
Well, we'll look forward to that. And these two books will be promoted, of course, and I know that people are going to really relate, as I said earlier, to different parts of your story. And I thank you for being so open and honest with us. And thank you also for being on Never, Never, Ever Give Up Hope.
Thank you, Carol. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.